So hi, welcome everyone to the Undergraduate Research Roundtable. This is going to be a recorded session for those of y'all, maybe you have some conflict, you guys can't make it, but you still want to learn about how to, get into undergraduate research, what exactly undergraduate research is about, and then, hear from Michelle, Rush, and I about, our experiences and maybe give you guys an idea of what your experience could be as well. So my name is La. I am a third-year biology major. I'm on the pre-med track. I work as an undergrad in the lab of Dr. Clark with some, really great graduate students. And we conduct research on caspases, which is little proteins that basically, control apoptosis, cell death, inflammation, a host of other things. So I've been in that lab for, I want to say, over a year and a half at this point. So very exciting work there. Rush?
Hey guys, my name is Rabih Patel. I go by Rush at UTA. It's my sophomore year. I'm a physics major. I do research with Dr. Amal Lopez in the space physics lab. My research deals with solar wind and magnetosphere and those kind of things, basically space weather. I've been doing an individual project since last semester, where I am trying to find the correlation between the solar wind data of two satellites, which is very prominent because those two satellites are used to sort of monitor the space weather. And if the data that they record is not accurate, then um, it can have pretty serious sort of um, issues in the future, because solar wind sort of it it has an effect on our everyday life, including the satellites, our electric grid, even if the magnitude of it is pretty high and stuff like that. So I deal with that recently. I've also been involved in high energy physics with Dr. Kaushik Day in his neutrino physics lab for about 2 months, and that lab deals with a lot of data science and um, a lot of computational work. So I've I've done that as well in the last summer.
I guess it's my turn now. Hi guys, my name is Michelle. Welcome to the Undergraduate Research Roundtable. I'm a junior majoring in biology. I'm on the pre-med track as well. I'm actually currently applying for this upcoming cycle, so basically next month. I'm currently involved in research regarding basically how evolutionary forces such as natural selection, mutation, and genetic drift affect Daphnia, which are basically water fleas. To be honest, I only recently got into this research lab just like a couple months ago. So, well, basically almost a year. But due to COVID, I didn't go into lab as much last year. But now I'm also in another research lab class, still dealing with Daphnia. It's with Dr. Walsh's undergraduate research experience course. And I think it's a pretty fun course. We're actually wrapping up our research and presenting our data and all of yeah, presenting our data soon. So yeah, that's basically it.
I see you have a question here from Kevin. He asks, so how did you get started in research and what was that process like? So I'll go ahead and go first this one. So I was kind of exposed to the idea of research during my freshman year during a UNIV class. And so in my UNIV class, we had a faculty who was attached and would come every once in a while. And for me, that was Dr. Clark, who also, I was taking his biology 1 class. So I saw him, several times a week. So one time he came to class and he essentially had a presentation over research, specifically undergraduate research, how you get, how would you get into it, what that entails, and, what you can get out of it essentially. And so, it piqued my interest. I took, notes of his presentation on how to get in. And I waited until sophomore year, like essentially the first week of school. I, sent him several emails. I made sure that during the previous year when I still took his class, I, formed a good relationship with him, and, he got to know me more than just, a number. He knew my face. I asked him questions. And when the time came, I expressed my interest in his research. I knew what his research was about, and I said, hey, I would like to join your lab. And so I met him at the College of Science Mixer, and he said, because he wasn't responding to my emails, and the first thing he said is, yes, Lon, I've read your email. Email me back about when I get the scheduled interview. So I scheduled an interview with Dr. Clark, went to his office. He asked me a couple of questions, like what are a different research lab, or what am I researching? I answered those. And then I told him, how much time I was willing to commit to spending in this lab, and I started the next week. And so it took a lot, persistence, and just being dedicated that, hey, I really wanted to, do research with him. And since I was stuck on that, I, eventually found my way into his lab.
I think I can go next. So the only so one of the key factors why I chose UTA and coming to the United States from India was that I wanted to do undergrad research in either astrophysics or space physics. The That was like my motivation that sort of uh, helped me to apply to U.S. universities and then apply for that tedious visa procedure. And on my first week on campus, I guess I was in the College of Science mixer, the student faculty mixer, and there I got to know about a research colloquium that was happening that week. And I went to that colloquium. There I met Dr. Rama Lopez. I had read about his research on space weather, and I talked about him on that, and just how exciting I found it. And I asked him if he had any opportunities for me in his lab, and so he asked me if I can come the following Monday. So basically, my second week on campus, I was doing space physics research with Dr. Amar Lopez. And my second research that I was involved with Dr. Day, I was in his freshman physics class for 2 semesters. I did good, and it was an honors class, so there were like 10 people in the class, so I got to know him better. We also talked about various different things, including like Dan Brown novels, which we both liked, and cool physics stuff as well. And so over the summer, I asked him if he had any opportunity over the summer in his lab. And so he got me involved that summer with the Atlas project that he's doing. So that is how I got my 2 positions.
So I guess I'll be going next. So I got into research through the honors college. So with the honors college, you have, in order to graduate with an honors degree, you have to do an honors project during your graduating semester. So research has always been on my mind in freshman year and sophomore year, and I didn't try to reach out to a research lab until last spring. So this is literally right before COVID, because I was currently working a part-time job and dedicating a lot of my time to working, and then also just like going to school full-time, taking like 16, 17 hours per semester. So I basically had a friend who was in Dr. Sensu's lab, and she was in his lab for almost a year at that point. So I just asked her if her research lab had any openings, and she said that I could just email Dr. Sensu and just express my interest. So that's what I did. So I just directly emailed him asking if there was any positions or any opportunities for me to join his lab, and he said sure. And so he just interviewed me, and it was a very brief, quick, easy interview. It was he's a very nice professor. And so I got into his research lab, and I've only just cleaned beakers and just like transferred Daphnia into like different beakers. So yeah, that's how I basically got into research. It's not very it was relatively easy compared to most students' process of getting into research, because many other students have to basically have to email many different professors to try to get into a research lab. But mine, I was just lucky enough to know a friend that was already in a research lab. So that's how I got into research.
Okay, so Kevin said, Michelle kind of touched on this with the beaker cleaning and Daphnia transfer. But for those just going to classes and on the outside looking in, what is the experience like? The time commitment and what kind of things are you doing?
Okay, yeah. So to answer your question, so when you first start getting into a research lab, so basically the task you're delegated with is basically just cleaning beakers and just other equipment in the research lab. And for me, I also had to basically transfer diaphnea, so water fleas from different beakers into the next and just change out their media. I forgot to add this in. I also had to make the media for them to reside in the beaker. So basically just take a whole bunch of chemicals with distilled water to try to simulate the environment they would be living in a lake. So that's what I did. I spent about 8 to 10 hours per week. So what I did was just go into lab like 2 hours per day out of my week. And yeah, that's what I did for my research lab.
I think I should go next. So, my first semester was pretty interesting because Dr. Lopez wanted us to. So if a new student comes in, he will give 2 or 3 modules regarding space weather and cool stuff like uh, the concept of aurora, and there's something called a magnetic connection that happens in the space. So he would give us modules about that, and the only thing he would expect from us, at least in the first few months or like first few weeks, is that we would come up with questions. And I think that sort of helps to ask questions. By ask questions, I mean actively ask questions and not take any given data as a fact, and actively research on that, and asking the important question of why is the stuff happening. And I guess that really helped me to sort of be inquisitive about space physics, and just not taking stuff as a fact, and rather than proving why it is right. And so I usually spend, it depends how much time I spend on my research each week. Sometimes I spend only one hour, and sometimes it goes to 5 or 6 or even 7 hours. uh, so basically, if I'm averaging the data, it goes for 3 4 5 hours, and if I'm just putting it in the code and running the code, it just goes for like 30 minutes or an hour. So it depends, but the process is pretty interesting, and it helps you as a student to learn other things and be inquisitive as well on the other parts of your academics.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. And it says, are you working with others in, actually, let me answer the first question for moving on to the second. So for those, just looking outside in, the experience in the beginning, depending on most labs, to be honest, it might seem a little bit underwhelming. You're going to do a lot of cleaning. So you'll be washing a lot of dishes, and be restocking things. But it's kind of important to note that during the early stages of lab, by washing dishes, by putting things in their place, you get a feel and for the layout of the lab, because most labs have like a tremendous amount of material, and where gloves are, where pipettes are, where the different sorts of pipettes are. Like in my lab, there's like 3 or 4. There's like 4 different fridges. Each has their own unique place, and within each fridge there's like a billion different things, and some protein goes in some very important vial. So you spend a few months there, you spend enough time there, you learn where everything is. Once you clean up dishes, you learn the layout of the lab, you start to you begin to get responsibility. You can assist with certain procedures, and eventually after you've done that, you've basically proven your competency, and you contribute to the lab. Then you can essentially get your own projects to do, usually supervised by a graduate student who is essentially there to help you the entire time, which is a great segue to move on to the second question Kevin just asked, which he asked, are you working with others in the lab/research environment, and what has that community been like, and how have you fit in or been treated? So typically in a lab, at least one I've been in, from my experience, I'm never really alone. I've always had a graduate student. So, Isha and Bethune, shout out to you too. And, Suma and the rest, who've always been there to kind of, hold my hand and show me how everything is done. But also to explain what is the importance behind every step that we're doing. What is the significance of this, right? So it's very cool to see concepts in the classroom, or maybe just on pages of a textbook, be applied in person. So for example, in 1 week I learned about PCR in genetics, and then the very next day I was able to use PCR to create more DNA and replicate that. Everyone is essentially kind of working together in the lab. Sometimes when things are stressful, like having an undergrad student to teach can kind of slow things down. But it's always invaluable to be able to have an undergraduate student who can purify a protein or make more agar-free or whatever is the case. So everyone's always been very inclusive, and I've never had a time where I felt that graduate students weren't actively trying to teach me something or basically expand my knowledge base. Hope that answers the question. Michelle, would you like to go next?
I can go next.
You can go as well.
I would like to reciprocate something on the last question as well. I think one of the perks of working with Dr. Lopez in space physics is that you don't have to go to the labs. So you can just do everything online. And I think we don't have to clean dishes, so it's not that tedious. We just have to, if he wants to, we just have to sometimes sit next to our computers and average some stuff for him, which is like you just are given numbers and data, and you just put them in Excel and just average them manually, which seems tedious, something a computer can do on it itself. But hey, coming back to this question, my so I work with 2 graduate students and 3 undergraduate students. I directly work with Fatima. She's a graduate student. So she helps me with my individual project that I'm currently doing. So she helps me with stuff like understanding what different parameters mean and help me write the code for some computations that I'm doing, and also understanding what the data means before the analysis of it. So she helps me during the different parts of my research. But when I first joined as a freshman, I did not know much of the math that is involved with space physics, and not even the physics of it. So both Paulina and Fatima, they both are graduate students that are in Dr. Lopez's lab. So they helped me to sort of learn the math and physics part of the research, and also like overcome the learning curve as well. So the transition was pretty smooth because all the guys were pretty inclusive. And we also had Chelsea back then. She was an undergrad as well. So I was sort of shadowing her, and I was observing what she was doing. And then I sort of, for the first semester, I continued her research after she graduated. And then I moved on to my own project. So the transition was made pretty easy because of the other teammates, and they just helped me to overcome the learning curve that, as a freshman or even a sophomore or junior, you'll most probably have, because the stuff your professor must be dealing with is postdoctoral, at least postdoctoral level. So
You're still
your
muted,
mic is
Michelle.
on mute.
I forgot to unmute myself. Sorry. Okay, so what I was saying, I think my lab slash research environment was very friendly and very collaborative. So a lot of the undergraduate students would be helping out the graduate students with their projects, with they were asking for help. I have this really nice RA. Her name is Irene, and she made the transition into like being introduced into the lab much easier for me. I felt pretty shy, and I was pretty I guess I was not intimidated, but I was just really worried I was just really worried how if I wouldn't fit in or transition well, but she helped the transition process for me. Yeah, so yeah, the community was pretty friendly. I even pre-COVID, so like right before lockdown, one of the grad students celebrated her birthday at Carrollton at Dongo, one of the restaurants in Carrollton, and I was actually invited to it. So it was so I think my the undergraduate students and the grad students are very friendly towards each other. It's a very nice collaborative environment, and I think I've been treated well by them.
So Kevin is asking about the Discover Symposium that we have going on this semester. Uh, so I am a participant in that. So the basically I am I feel I should explain my research a bit before going on. So my research is basically there are two satellites that monitor the space weather. They monitor the solar wind and their different parameters. So what I'm basically trying to find out is that when the satellites are aligned with each other between Earth and Sun in space, whether the data they're getting is correlated with each other or not. So basically what I'm doing is since both the satellites are at different position in space, they must have some time lag between the data. So I'm finding out that time lag and moving the data of one satellite with respect to that time lag and checking if then both the data sets correlate or not. So that was my research. So one of the events I found was an event such that the data sets did not correlate with each other. So I always explain it like, let's say if you have two eyes and both the eye and you are like alone in a vacuum, there is one object that you're given to analyze, but both of your eyes are telling your nerves different things. So basically you cannot trust any of it because you do not know which data is good or which data is bad. So my next step is sort of like researching if what kind of obstacles were there that could have hindered their data gathering process of both the satellites and which one is correct with looking at different case studies. Uh, it was sort of different this year because we were only given 5 minutes to explain ourselves and that too on a video. So that was a little different because like I usually do presentations for like half an hour and sort of compressing that to a 5 minute talk was sort of exhausting because I had to re-record myself for 3 4 times. But uh, it was also fun because I got to refine uh, what was important that was deliverable and how I could better explain my research to people who are not that well versed with space physics or solar physics. So it was a fun experience. I did not do anything new because I already finished that project. So it was not that tedious. I just had to make a poster and then record myself describing that poster. But it was really fun. Um, so Kevin has asked, has your research impacted your regular coursework and is it worth it? I think it has impacted positively because, as I said, it helped me become more inquisitive. So I'm actively looking for questions, asking those questions in classes, and it helps me to sort of remember better in my classes for a long time as well. So I would say it is totally worth it.
Uh, yes, I would say that basically, between the hard science classes and research, depending on whichever lab you're in, they definitely reinforce each other. Um, learning things from slides or textbook or even videos, that's great. That's one resource. But being able to apply that, in person is something else. Now he's saying, how's that impacting your regular coursework in terms of a time commitment? I would say research is as much of a time commitment as you put into it. So, definitely the more you put in, the more you get out of it. I know for a lot of, especially pre-med students or those in the pre-health track who do research, um, I think it's best if you start as early as possible. So you have essentially more time to get familiar with the lab you're in, maybe, develop competency and then have the ability to have your own project and then, make something of it. It's not something I would cram in a very short amount of time. It's not just the breadth of your experience. In this case, it's really is the depth of your experience. So the longer you can be in a lab, the more opportunity you have to not only learn, but to, create something as well.
To answer Kevin's question as well, yes, it is a bit of a time commitment when you first start getting into research. Like Lung said, you basically make the most out of your experience the more time you commit to it. I think my research has impacted my regular coursework, but in a positive way, because it's pretty cool getting to see what we learn in the textbooks and our lectures come into real life and actually be able to apply it and stuff. And another benefit out of this is that you start to basically think a lot of things, think from a different perspective, and you're just always like critically thinking and always just basically trying to, come up with a way of, not, sorry, what I'm trying to say is that you basically get more critical thinking out of this. You're analyzing more. You basically get to, basically get to bring up what you're sorry, what I'm trying to say is that you basically, whatever you're thinking, like any, like whenever you're inquiring about like a scientific question or whatnot, you can basically just be able to bring it back to life with like, conducting experiments and stuff. So I think it's worth it. It is a bit of a time commitment though, and it's a bit difficult trying to get used to transition from, having to manage it with your coursework, but I think it's worth it.
I'll go read this one out loud. So Kevin asked another question. It says, any research pro tips, best vending machines, navigating campus after hours, and then coffee or tea. So sometimes I know some students get quite busy during the weekdays to get work, to get research in, because between class, extracurricular activities, and perhaps late light labs and stuff, it's kind of hard to do research during the weekdays. Sometimes you can counteract that by doing research during the weekends, assuming you don't have another job or something along those lines. There's been a few times I've come in during the weekends. Campus is pretty quiet during that time. And so, if you want to come in during the weekends and you want to stay for a while to get all your research done during the weekends, I would say bring lunch or bring dinner. I know some labs have, kind of a break room where you can sit and eat and, have a microwave and stuff like that. So while you're waiting for an experiment to run or data to collect or analyze or whatnot, you can eat some food, hang out, maybe study for your classes a bit. Navigating campus after hours. Yes, I will say if you're on campus after hours, or essentially when it's dark, or sometimes on the weekends and stuff, some buildings will be locked. There have been many times where I've not been able to get inside of a building because it's locked and I didn't have access. So swiping my Mavity didn't work. Luckily, there were some people who were inside, so I started banging on the door and they let me in. Thanks to them, my proteins didn't expire. Coffee or tea? I'm a coffee in the morning, tea in the afternoon, but I'm a big coffee drinker. Okay, so that's lightning round for me. Raj.
Pre-COVID, we used to have our space, like we used to sit in our space cave. We call our lab space the space cave because it's in the basement of Science Hall, and we all are Batman fans, so we call it space cave. But so pre-COVID, we used to go there. Now all of it is just done online, so I don't have to go on campus that much. But one of the few things I really like on campus is the hot chocolate in market of the UC. They have a really good hot chocolate there, but I don't know when they close. I think the hours are sort of restricted in the COVID times, but they do have a great hot chocolate. So after my research was done, I would reward myself with a cup of hot chocolate. Coffee or tea? Actually, I don't have much of both of them, but if I were to choose one, I would go with a good cup of coffee.
To conclude, I personally have ever used, well, I've only used one vending machine on campus. I typically try to avoid it because I'm cheap and I like to take my own snacks from home. So I would recommend doing that, bringing snacks from home if you're going to stay on campus for a long time, especially during after hours. Yeah, if I came across, being locked from certain buildings after hours, I typically try to not stay after hours on campus if possible, but there's really no workaround around that. Coffee or tea? I'm not much of a coffee person. I'm trying to get into it, but slowly but surely. I'm more of a tea person.
So Kevin asks, closing thoughts, your favorite memories, advice to younger you, excuse me, call for additional questions. Let me see here. So closing thoughts. So in general, I would say that if here with your time at UTA, you should definitely get into undergraduate research. Research is not something that you should just read about or see other people do and say, oh, cool, and leave that to be. You should get your hands dirty. You should dive in head first and learn the world that research has to offer. It's not only going to enhance your education, but you're just gonna get so much out of it. Favorite memories. So keeping the theme of doing research after hours, I had lab one time. I had like 8 or 9 p.m. I think I had a lot of work the previous week and a test the following week, so I had to get my research in and some work in during the weekends. And I remember there was a shelter-in-place order because there was a tornado, and some of my grad students had never seen a tornado or never had to go through a tornado warning. And so while I was like, okay, guys, I'm gonna head to the basement and chill in the basement, they all ran outside to go try to see this tornado at night, which was absolutely hilarious. So I'll probably never forget that. Advice to a younger you. I would tell myself that everything's going to be okay, that you should probably just chill out. I know a lot of students like to freak out over test grade or whatever else here at university, but just know that a single mistake or maybe even a couple is not going to end you. So just chill out, like for my own sake, I guess, like it's going to be okay. I don't have any calls for additional questions. And with that, I'll let Michelle and Rush wrap up.
Yeah, I would totally agree with Luan that you should definitely get into undergrad research. It's gonna benefit you in your academics as well, help you build a better relationship with the professor you're working with, and just acquire more knowledge. I think one of the reasons you have chose science is because you're inquisitive about stuff that is going around you. And I think getting involved in research helps you somewhat answer that question, if not completely answer those questions. So I think one of those things you should consider. My favorite memories was definitely meeting Dr. Sylvester James Gates. He's a theoretical physicist, and he did a talk at UTA pre-COVID. And one of my favorite memories was meeting him. He's like my childhood hero. And advice to my younger self: it's all gonna be okay. The hours you put in, they reward in future. The whatever you work, if you work honestly, it's gonna reward you in future. So that is one advice I would give myself.
Closing thoughts. So I honestly regret not getting to research any sooner. I mean, I did get into research the spring semester of my sophomore year, but I wish I was able to, not able to, but I wish I reached out and inquired about research sooner. Favorite memories regarding research. Basically going out to Carrollton with my lab group for the first time was really fun. It was really fun pre-COVID. We got to eat really delicious food. Had a great night out, and I was able to, to just de-stress and relax from school and not think about that for a while. Advice to a younger me: so everything's going to be okay. Your hard work will pay off. You worked so hard to get to. You're going to work hard to where you want to go. So don't stress out too much, and yeah, everything's going to be fine. But yeah, that's about it for me.
Yeah, so if no one else has anything to add, I would just like, everyone, thank you for coming today. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Kevin, for setting this up and, for asking questions and getting this conversation going. If you're watching this recording now, obviously, number one, study hard. And number two, when you get the time, please get into undergraduate research. It's something that you're not, regret. And if you find that, hey, it's not for you, then, you could always, end it there. Your time at UTA is really just, you get out exactly what you put in. So why not try, undergraduate research, get your hands dirty and just learn so much from it. Thank you all.